Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Ransom, and welcome back to episode 4 of Beyond the Jersey. This episode is where we will be talking about identity and shifts. If you're new here, this podcast is all about athletes' mental health in sports and just overall awareness and, bringing, light to the situation. So we have my brother, Nicholas Ransom. And today I wanted to kind of switch it up this episode and speak with a former college athlete to get his perspective on mental health issues and just like his overall journey. I think that it'll be a really good perspective compared to other episodes that we have talked about. So today I have Nicholas Ransom, former Salisbury men's lacrosse alum. Some little accolades: All-American, one-time NCAA national champion, multiple conference championship wins, one of the nation's top goalies, 7.06 goals against average, which briefly took top 3 of all 3 divisions. USI LA Scholar All-American, USA Lacrosse Magazine Honorable Mention All-American, All ECAC and All CLC First Team Honors, and number 4 on the list of all-time saves at Salisbury with 507. I mean, the list could go on and on. So just without further ado, welcome, Nick, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for that introduction.
So kind of to kick us off, I just want to ask like a little fun question about, you've played lacrosse your whole life. So what kind of made you join your sport and what kind of inspired you to get into it?
Well, you're my sister, so you kind of know everything, but to give everybody else kind of a backstory, I mean, our dad has been coaching a high school team or something since we were born. I have a picture of me before, basically probably the first time I could walk, holding a lacrosse stick. Always loved the sport. It's something different. I've always played, football, soccer, all the basketball, and I love every sport, but lacrosse kind of brings it all together, and it's something truly special, and it's something I really thrived in and wanted to be really good at.
So kind of to continue with that, what was your recruiting journey like and how did that affect your mental health knowing you wanted to play at the collegiate level?
Yeah, that's a big struggle with a lot of people nowadays. I mean, especially with social media becoming such a big thing. I mean, you're seeing people left and right get recruited. You're seeing these people at the tournaments. You're just like, you feel like you're behind sometimes, and that's kind of how I felt like how I felt. I kept making all these accolades in travel teams and whatnot, and I'd get a couple conversations with coaches, but nothing serious and nothing really where I wanted to be or where I thought I should be. Uh, and then especially with COVID coming around, I had a few opportunities at great schools. I was looking at a lower D1 school that was, one of my top choices between that and Salisbury. And at the end of the day, I went to a camp at Salisbury. Coach texted me 2 days later, and I knew that's where I wanted to be. That's where they win championships, and I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as you touched on, recruiting is a really hard part and one of the hardest parts of everyone's journey. So it's very important that like you're staying intact with your mental health and understanding that you're more than just like your sport. And if it doesn't work out, then it maybe isn't meant to be. But nonetheless, you'll find your place eventually. So kind of shifting gears, in previous episodes, especially the last one, we kind of touched on stigmas and mental health, more along the lines of concerns in like men's sports, because we kind of mentioned how men are seen as having like a hard exterior. They have to show off like that, basically like no emotion type of thing, like no
Yeah.
tears, feelings. So, to touch on that briefly, I'm curious what you think about that. What is your perspective in that aspect?
I mean, there's definitely a stigma of being always the tough guy, and you see that around the locker room. You see that throughout the schools. You see that throughout your entire life. Um, but that's something a lot of guys end up breaking, hopefully, with the friendship throughout the team. I know people still kind of have those walls up, and that's something about being a man. I always feel like that's something we kind of have a part of ourselves, but I think every guy needs to realize that people and there's places where you can relax, be comfortable with your teammates and talk to them about everything. Um, and those come down to, your best friends, whether they're on the sports team or not. Really having that time to actually talk to somebody other than a family member, can still be one of the boys that you can really let your guard down and not be so tough around all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of like going along with like struggles and possible times of like questioning things in your sport, especially with injuries, like as a lot of people know, and I know that you went through a lot of those struggles. What kind of kept you going in those moments of failure or struggle in your sport, whether that be through injury or losing games and whatnot?
Yeah, I think it's for everyone to realize what they truly want out of everything. So when I went through my injuries, I tore my ACL coming into Salisbury, sat out freshman year, broke my hand, chance to being a starter that year, and then stepped back another time. But my focus never kind of got off of lacrosse. It did for probably a half a second when I was in so much pain from breaking my hand. But I knew sitting on the sidelines the rest of the time that's where I wanted to be, that's where I wanted to end up, and that was my focus. And that's not for everybody. There's times where when I said you kind of want to walk away and do something else, and that's completely fine. And I think that's what you have to have interest of yourself. I don't think people should give up too easily. I do think some people give up too easily and regret it. Um, but I think they have to like look truly inside, take some time and think about what their true purpose is and what they want out of that experience. Because it could be keep going, and it could be, relax. My knee still hurts every day, and would I love to say never played lacrosse in high school and college and never did everything? I don't know. I'm probably definitely not. That's kind of one of the sacrifices you have to take if that's what you want.
Really great advice. That's awesome. So, as I said, the title of this episode is Who Am I Now? And kind of like the point of that is to discuss the transition from being a collegiate athlete of 4+ years to now living a normal adult life, with a 9 to 5 job or whatever it may be. How difficult would you say that transition was for you from your last college game or college class and playing lacrosse in general to your present time now and not doing that anymore? Do you think it was fairly easy?
I think, the first, during the summer, you kind of forget because it's the summertime and, maybe like I didn't start working until kind of the start of the school year, just to give myself that break. Um, but it is definitely, I mean, it's kind of depressing if you really sit down and, you have social media. So you're seeing the guys practice now. You're seeing everybody, all the feed of what's going on in their lives still back at school. And you know what, that hurts a little bit because you wish you were still there, you wish you were still in that atmosphere. Um, but our coach said a good thing in my last meeting with him. He says it's just a game. Life moves on. At the end of the day, I still play men's league. I can still go out. I still coach on the weekends. There's still a part of me that will be connected to lacrosse through and through. I will still continue to do this for the rest of my life. However, it's not the focus of my life. You got the adult life, so that means worrying about your job, worrying about that new focus. It's kind of a whole shift from school and lacrosse now to what your professional life wants to be look like. What you really want out of life. Whether it's you keep working out, which I hope everybody does. Staying focused on that drive towards their work or their career, whatever they're passionate about. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's sadly just a game. I know so many people care about it, but it's so funny because who really cares who won the Super Bowl 3 years ago? No one cares, It's really cool winning that championship, but it's all about the next one. So there's a part of you that kind of hurts that letting that go. All those memories are just memories now. But there's a chance for you to make new ones and focus on new stuff and really get excited to a whole new way.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on what I was going to say, like how have you been able to reset your mind? Because as you said, like going to the summer, oh, like it's just summer break, I'll be back. And so like having to really like, oh no, like I'm not going back, like this is my new life. So kind of touching on how you're able to reset your mind and like have you done anything or been able to seek help or advice from others in that transition, or have you really just kind of carried that weight with yourself?
Um, I've shared that with some of the guys, obviously. Some of my graduation guys that I still talk to this day, the guys. Um, they're still a little bit more connected to lacrosse than I would be, but they still text me all the time and wish I was out with the boys. It's fun and I can still talk to them about it. And but there's a part of you that always hurts a little bit. You see an Instagram post, but now is your chance to kind of be the backbone of the alumni that was supporting you throughout that time. Now I get to support those guys, but talking with those guys, talking with everybody that's graduated, it's all exciting new stuff. I don't think anybody looks back. I think that's probably the most important for those people going through school now is, live and do what you want, do what you're passionate about, live every day as it was your last because it will end. There's a time where sports don't matter. So I think there's people around you, like your friends and family that you can always talk to, but I think also just talking to somebody that's going through the same thing. They could be going it a little worse than you or a little bit better, and maybe they have different perspective. Um, so yeah, the world opens up if you just kind of reach out for it.
I think that's great. Like knowing that you have like that support and realizing you're not alone in it, like being able to reach out to like old teammates and stuff, I think is really important because I think a lot of people do transition and like they either don't speak to those people ever again or they're too far away or whatever it may be. I think that it's really important to stay in contact, especially in the beginning stages of transitioning out of college because you're still figuring out who you are as a person now without your sport, whether you're still involved or not, but it's still completely different than actually being in college and playing. So, um, to kind of continue with that, like when your college career ended, when would you say your first moment you realized your identity had to shift? Because we talked about how like, oh, it's like that's your identity, like your sport is who you are in that moment. So was there a moment that you felt that shift or you're like, oh, this is hitting me different?
Yeah, I don't know if it was after the first week or after maybe the first couple of days when I got out of like orientation day. But it was like the first time I saw an Instagram post, and I was so happy for the guys seeing it. But then there's a part of me that's like, you know, everyone told me before you started work, don't work until you have to, and the 9 to 5 sets in, but that's where you're kind of have to shift that focus. It's really hard. It's really hard to get into, especially for the first year or two. But that's sadly what you have to just switch your mind to. And I still love. I think that's what it still connects me to this day. Is I work with a couple I work with an alumni. One of my bosses, who's a Salisbury alum, same thing. And we still have our times where we talk about work, and then we have our times where like to talk about the good old days in Salisbury. So I think it's very unique and amazing thing where you can still have a focus on what you're doing now and what your drive is, but reflect on the memories. Every once in a while. I have my helmet up in the yeah, up in my office right now, and I still love looking at it every single day and just remembering those times.
What would you say is like a positive thing to not playing lacrosse anymore? Because, we're talking about like, oh, that whole possibly like negative feeling you may have, but like, is there an outlook to being able to look back at your sport? Like, what would you say could be something positive or a takeaway?
Well, I think the new jobs of everybody, like when you start your career, it opens up a lot of doors. I mean, you have a lot of free time to experience amazing things that you can't do in sports, you can't do in college. I mean, I'm sure some people travel and all that, but now you get to do so many more things throughout your day. Hopefully you still work out every once in a while, but there's lifts morning and night. Sometimes you got morning and night practices, and those can be really draining. You love every day, but you also kind of get tired of the wear and tear on your body. And now it's kind of the shift of where you kind of get to treat yourself. What are you actually passionate about, other than a sport? What do you actually like to do?
So like that kind of is a good shift of like who are you now? Like what is my purpose now? Because, in college your identity, your personality, what you feel is your entire purpose is your sport in that moment. Like your one goal and one drive is, to win, to get national championship or to get these accolades, whatever it may be, that's kind of where your mind is set at. So how would you say you separated that or was it difficult, especially coming out of college, but also like in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely difficult in the moment, but now I'm kind of settled. Been working for like 5 months now or something like that. So I'm definitely more settled now. What was the end of your question? I'm sorry. You're trying to.
how would you say you separate that, or was it difficult, like separating your identity of your sport and like who you are as a person? Because your
Oh,
identity
definitely.
is sport.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, especially lacrosse people, for some reason, we get identified. Like you can, apparently, a lot of people can pick us out of a crowd, probably because of our hair, probably because of the way we act. Um, but now it's the real world, and I mean, I hope people don't draw into those stigmas of how we act, and kind of, if I can say it, kind of the douchebag type style guy. I think we've kind of reflected and kind of been more respectful, trying to change our ways. I know even our team had a freaking, we had a Bible study every Monday. Lots of guys trying to reflect on where they're at now and trying to get better. And, that's what you have to do in the future, and that's what you have to continue to do. Just always kind of reflecting, what can I do better today? What can I what can I do to make myself better than yesterday?
Yeah.
So
And that kind of was a good topic to kind of transition of like what our previous episodes we talked a lot about how like especially with guys and like mental health, like they're kind of seen as like the jock and like the douchebag, like that's their exterior and like overall perspective that people see in like real time. So just like knowing that everyone is human and that's not how they always are. And especially with that like transition out of their sport, like, oh, they're actually a real person now, like they're sport. Kind of go to the next question. It's a little more heavy, a little more, but it kind of is a really good topic when going with mental health, because I feel like a lot of athletes can attest to the feeling of not complete. So, do you feel like overall in your career, do you feel a sense of incompleteness? Especially my biggest fear is like not being feeling fulfilled at the end of the day, whether I win a national championship or conference or get a certain amount of goals or assists, whatever it may be, like overall, like my biggest fear is like not feeling complete or that I did something long lasting impactful on the program. So after ending your last game, looking back on your entire career, how do you personally feel post grad?
I mean, post grad, a lot of people congratulated me on a great career. I have two losses. I mean, that's something I don't think a lot of people can say. However, I was on an amazing team. That's kind of what we expected there. Um, but I definitely look back and, people were like, "Oh, you only got one ring." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, man. Got those two playoff games." But there's always going to be doubt. There's always going to be regret. And that's, it's really hard to focus on that, but I hope a lot of people now, again, take a second, realize where they're at. What do I want out of this? Do I want to be the top goal scorer? Do I want to be this? Do I want to be that? And set realistic expectations. I mean, everyone has a role, especially on a lacrosse team. And, no matter if you were on the first guy on the bench or the last, you had a role. I mean, you were always getting excited for the boys because if you were in, they would be doing the same thing for you. Um, and you got to work your way up to the top, and that's just how it is. And a lot of people, I do feel like a lot of people are feel like unfulfilled if they're not playing a lot of this and a lot of that. But at the end of the day, you're gonna remember the practices. You're gonna remember the nights with the guys or with the girls or the relationships in them. Nobody remembers who actually played in our championship game. Nobody cares. It just, hey, I got a freaking ring. I think that's what I think people are too worried about. I'm this and I'm that, and just focus on kind of what you see yourself as. And if you're not happy with that, then work a little bit harder, push for that. But I think a lot of people feel kind of unworthy throughout their entire lives. And I think that's a lot of outside perspective. What do people think of me? When really that's all noise. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's opinions on me which don't matter. You got to really look at you and what can I do out of this um, to be more fulfilled. And even if you aren't maybe the best player, try your hardest in practice. Always push the other people. I mean, there's always stuff to do, even if starting and all that's not necessarily what you see yourself getting out of it. There's plenty of opportunities throughout that you can take advantage of.
No, definitely. I do love that. I think, as you said, like, what no matter what your role is, like you can have a strong impact. And if you're that person on the bench, okay, then you're the hype man and you're boosting up your team and you're getting your like our coach loves to say, like those people also need to be their best, because what if something happens or there's a shift, like you are our next line and we need to trust you to go out there and perform just like any starter would. So, yeah, I definitely think that's really important, understanding your role, but like knowing that you're more than that, and there's always something to it. Um, so
Just to
kind of,
touch on the subject, I think that's also your attitude. I think a lot of people have sad attitudes lately. You know, anything that happens, everybody looks at what like in a bad way. If you get cut off in traffic, you're like, oh, whatever, whatever. When really it's like, all right, they probably didn't see you. They're on their way to work or something. Like everybody, I think, needs to take a more positive approach to the game.
100%. I definitely think, and that's why I wanted to do this so bad, talk about mental health, because it just like, I feel like eats away at people so bad, and like can really shift their personality into something negative because they're just constantly beating themselves up or questioning, so many different things. So, I mean, I know that like I questioned a lot when I wasn't playing, and what am I supposed and then what am I supposed to do? And then my mind kind of shifted, like, okay, this is my role now. Like, how can I push myself to be better to get into the role I want? But also, how can I help my teammates out? Because at the end of the day, your coaches are making the decision for a reason, and you got to trust that it's the right one. So,
Plus your attitude, I mean, it reflects on how you play too. If you have a bad attitude, you're not going to be playing very well. You're in
exactly,
a good mood, you're doing great, you're going to be in the flow, you're going to be doing great.
definitely. Um, so I kind of wanted to ask, what do you think some strengths from your athletic career could have possibly like, taken over into your post grad? Is there anything that you learned as being an athlete that you would take into now your current life?
Well, I think there's a lot of things just in sports in general, leadership, communication, dedication. I don't think people realize how many jobs and people are hiring or looking for athletic people because we have so many qualities throughout the sport. I mean, you got to be disciplined, you got to be dedicated to go to those workouts, go to you're sacrificing a lot to play something that you love. So I think a lot of things come into that. I mean, leadership alone, communication. Are you a communicator on the field? And a lot of people that do play sports are closer together, which means they're better at just talking in general. You can go up to a random person and have a conversation. But something that really probably translated for me was just speak out. We had lots of film sessions where I ended up speaking up. I wasn't just kind of mute in the corner, just listening to everybody else talk and kind of chime in. And that kind of takes on that leadership role, but you really have to speak out when you have an opinion or something that could benefit somebody or anything like that. I think um, a lot of people at work in general probably stay a little quiet when things need to be done. If something needs to be done and you know about it, why can't it be done? And just being professional throughout the whole process. I mean, you have to be pretty professional on and off the field if you want to make it, especially with social media here and all of that. Like, if you do something, it's live. Everybody can see it, and I think it's really important to know how you carry yourself, how you want to be represented, and also give off that. If you want to be respected, you want this and that, you have to kind of carry yourself in that way and treat others that way as well. Because that really translates into your career. I mean, if you're not nice to somebody, it's going to bite you in the butt at the end of the day. But if you're personable, you hold the door open, you're respectful, it goes a long way.
Yeah, and I kind of touched on like what you said, like I'm sure as being like a captain, like that also like really translated because you had to like get into this leadership role, and like another kind of stigma. I feel like goalies don't really get that opportunity very often. So that kind of just goes to show like your leadership quality and how you're able to grow in that role. Because I know that it can be very like stressful and like knowing your place and what to do. But I definitely think that type of translation is really important going in to the real world, being able to have a voice and speak up, because a lot of people struggle with that, especially nowadays with everything being social media behind the screen. Like it's so easy to stay quiet now or just type things out. So I feel like that's definitely a huge quality that a lot of people need to like learn to transition with. And it can be difficult. Um, so again, kind of going on, your support, you mentioned how you were able to talk to your teammates about, what you were feeling or kind of like the transition with things. What kind of conversations do you wish coaches or teammates had with you before your career ended? Is there anything that you wish was said that you felt would have been beneficial, or is there just something that was said that actually really helped you? Like, do you feel supported, that you could smoothly move forward from being a college athlete into the next chapter of your life?
I definitely had a great transition at the end. I mean, I was really close with all the coaches. I think they always thought, and how I acted was always respectful, professional. Um, just being a nice guy at the end of the day, being a nice guy at the end of the day. Um, but it shows, true love at the end. We were all hugging, I was crying because, I've been there for 5 years. That's a lot of time to be with somebody in the locker room, on the field, um, in meetings with, and all of that. But if I had to say something I wish, I texted the guys after and all of that. We saw each other with the, dinner and everything. But it's something I always preach to them is just focus on what you actually want. And I'm gonna kind of preach this the entire episode, but like college people kind of get caught up in the party life and that aspect, which is great because it's fun. It's kind of what it is. You want to be out there. You want to meet new people. You want to have fun, but at the end of the day, you also have to get things done. If you drink yourself that night, can't wake up the next morning to go work out or even have a productive day in general. Your eating is off. You're not drinking enough water. All of that affects you at the end of the day. So I think it's all about living in the moment and also realizing your purpose out of everything. What do I want out of today? There's only so many hours of the day. It's freaking dark at 5 after I get off and it's miserable. What else can I do for these couple hours that I can get things done?
I think that's really important. I do agree. I think a lot of people get caught up in the college life, and like that tends to translate into their real life a little bit longer than it probably should because, you know, again, as we've been talking about, like that transition is kind of feels abrupt almost because like, oh yeah, I have 4 years, I have plenty of time, but it really sneaks up on you. And so, um, knowing that transition needs to happen and like again, living in the moment, just enjoying it while it lasts and not kind of harping on the little things and getting stressed out about whatever it may be, because at the end of the day, in the long run, it really doesn't matter. It's very little piece in your life that will affect you. So yeah, I love that. So kind of to end off this episode, I wanted to ask you, what is some advice you would give to a current college athlete when it comes to being an athlete at the higher level, and then anything you would say to those who are about to transition out of college, juniors, seniors, any advice you'd give?
Yeah, we kind of preach this at Salisbury, but when it comes to doing the extra work, when it really helps having people there. And I'm not saying you have to get your whole team there, but get your get at least two of your best friends and be like, hey, we're gonna hold each other accountable. We're gonna really do this, that, go to the gym, eat right, hit the wall, all of that type of stuff. I think it's really important to have people around you. I think people are getting lonely and lonelier. I think the percentages are getting up, and I think it's really important to have those close people with you. I think a lot of people get caught up in the drama and kind of stigmas about people, and I think really you got to bring each other together to rise up. I don't think you should be working out alone every day. I think you should bring 3 other people because that means 3 other people are getting better with you. And that's making everybody else elevate, and that just makes you a better person, a better teammate, a better person to be around. Yeah, I think that's.
No, that was awesome. Thank you so much for joining me this episode. I think a lot of people can take a lot away from what Nick had to say, overall, and I hope that those that are transitioning out of college or, nearing the end of their career really grasp this content and understand that they are more than their sport, and there's always more afterwards. Your life continues on. And like we said, you can always stay in your sport, whether that be coaching or doing, adult league. There's always a way to be involved, and that's just part of the transition of life. So that was so great. Thank you for joining us for episode 4. Next episode, we will have another college athlete continue on the mental health journey aspect of learning everyone's stories and hopefully you can connect as well. With that, thank you so much for joining this episode of Beyond the Jersey. I'm Emily Ransom. That was Nick Ransom. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time.